How did it happen? How does a man with nothing but calluses and good intentions wind up wanted for felony fraud? His name on a deed he never meant to steal. This isn't just my confession. It's a warning. Because trust isn't lost all at once. It's handed away, one signature at a time. Before lawyers, subpoenas, and news cameras parked outside my front door, my life was built on two things: routine and sweat. The sun in North Texas isn't just hot, it's mean. It doesn't warm you. It scalds you, peels the skin from your neck if you forget the sunscreen, makes the dust stick to your arms like paste. By 5:30 every morning, I was up before even the mockingbirds started their noise. I'd scrape myself out of bed, bones aching like they remembered every shingle I'd ever nailed, and shuffle to the kitchen for the same mug of gas station coffee. One sugar, no cream, just hot bitterness to jolt the body into motion. The scent of dirt and pine hit me first when I stepped outside, thick and wet, like the earth itself was sweating. My boots crunched over the gravel drive. The truck, 98. Chevy with a cracked windshield and a rattle in the axle, was always waiting like a tired friend. By 7, I was usually knee-deep in crawl spaces or balancing on a rafter in the July sun, hammer in one hand, plans in the other. I wasn't a foreman, not a boss, just a builder. A man with calluses where most men had skin and shoulders that knew how to bear weight. When folks in Denton County needed something solid, sheds, porches, patios, fences, they didn't call the big companies. They called me, Aaron Riley, because I showed up. I did the job. And I never walked off without looking a man in the eye and shaking his hand. My daddy taught me that. He never said much, but what he did say stuck like tar. But being dependable comes with its own kind of isolation. You become background noise. The guy who works, the guy who fixes things, the guy who's always tired. Dana tried to understand, tried harder than most would. But the space between us stretched thin over the years, like old joists bowing under weight they weren't built for. I'd walk in late and find her folding laundry with the TV muted, the soft glow flickering across her face. She wouldn't nag, just sigh like someone grieving quietly. "You're missing them, grow up, Aaron." I'd nod. What else was there to say? Ben was already halfway to adolescence. Mop of untamable brown hair, a mischievous smirk that was a carbon copy of mine at 12. Tyler was the quiet one, always watching, always wheezing. His asthma kept Dana up at night. I'd find her sometimes crouched beside his bed at 2 a.m., counting his breaths, her face tight with fear she wouldn't voice. We lived in the house I built. Not just worked on, built, board by board. Me in a floodlight and my son passing nails like we were building a future. Not just a home. That house meant more to me than anything, but the mortgage clung to us like a drowning man. Twice I'd refinanced, once after Dana's gallbladder surgery, once after Tyler's ambulance ride to the ER when he turned blue at school. Each time more papers, more signatures. The bank didn't blink. They just smiled and slid the forms over. Initial here, here, here. Like I was signing away slivers of my soul. And then there was Scott Morgan. Scott was the kind of man who walked into a room like he'd already won something. Rolled up sleeves, sunglasses on his head, Bluetooth in one ear. He was all teeth and charm. But underneath it, he was sharp, dangerously sharp. We met when we were both broke and pretending we weren't. Me, scraping for carpentry gigs. Him flipping salvage tools from pawn shops like they were gold bars. We shared a six-pack and a busted porch and called it friendship. Back in '08, when the economy tanked and my phone stopped ringing, Scott showed up with a beer in one hand and a set of blueprints in the other. "We're not going under," he said. "People always need something built. Government housing, insurance jobs. Trust me, we'll find the cracks." And we did. He handled the math, the deals, the permits. I did the labor. The first check felt like salvation. "You got to stop thinking like a worker," he used to say. "Real money's in the paper trail. That's where the game is now." Over the years, he became part of the furniture in our lives. Monday beers, holiday cookouts, birthday gifts for the boys. My kids called him Uncle Scott. Dana laughed at his stories, even let him babysit when Tyler was still in diapers. That's how deep he was in. He was family. At least I thought so. But by 2021, even Scott's magic was running dry. The market was bleeding. Plywood cost more than gold. Jobs got canceled mid-contract. I started cutting corners, patching instead of replacing, skimping on lunch to stretch gas money. The bills outpaced the jobs. Dana whispered about night shifts at Walmart. Ben asked why we never went on vacation like his friends. Tyler's prescriptions kept going up. I started leaving mail unopened on the counter, like ignoring the fire alarm would smother the flames. Then Scott showed up on my porch again. Tuesday, mid-afternoon. He looked like he always did, grinning, confident, like someone with a secret map to the gold mine. In his hand, a coffee, extra sugar. In the other, a manila folder thicker than a Bible. You ever think about flipping houses instead of just building them? I almost laughed. With what money? That's the beauty, brother. We got sweat equity. You know how to fix them. I know how to fund them. Let me handle the permits, the banks. All we need is a couple signatures, quick turnarounds, big upside. He made it sound so simple. When I told Dana, her lips pressed into a line so tight it looked painful. You trust him? I nodded. Yeah, I do. She looked at me like she wanted to believe it, but didn't. We can't lose this house, Aaron. I won't let that happen. She didn't say anything else, just turned off the bedroom light and lay down with her back to me. That night I lay awake listening to her breathe, thinking about every inch of that house, the weight of the roof I'd nailed, the squeaky board in the hallway, the windows I'd installed myself. I thought about Ben's laugh, Tyler's medicine, the bounce in Dana's walk before all this wore her down, and I told myself, like a fool, that this would save us. But that's the thing about trouble. It doesn't arrive like thunder. It starts like a whisper, a promise. A friend with a plan and a folder full of lines you don't read too closely. One signature. That's all it took. I remember the exact light that evening. The sky, the color of bruised peaches, air so still, even the cicadas had nothing to say. Scott stood on my porch like he always did, one boot on the top step, one hand clutching that familiar to-go coffee cup, even though it was pushing 90 degrees. His shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbows, tan forearms streaked with sweat and ink from some scribbled-up contract he'd just come from signing. Aaron, this is the one, he said, eyes glittering. I'm telling you, it's a fixer, but it's in a zip code with comps through the roof. One flip and we're golden. I didn't speak, just leaned against the frame of the screen door, watching the way the last of the light hit the driveway where my truck sat, dented in coughing rust. The boys' bikes lay sideways in the grass, forgotten after dinner. Inside, the kitchen sink was full of dishes. Dana had spent the morning at the pharmacy trying to get Tyler's new inhaler approved. Insurance was dragging their feet again. You handle the Reno, Scott continued, sliding the manila folder from under his arm like it was an invitation to salvation. I'll handle the banks, the appraisers, the permits. All we need is a little paperwork. You trust me, right? He grinned then, that too wide, too certain grin that had talked me into risk before, and somehow always landed on its feet. I stared at the folder, felt its weight even before I touched it. Right zip code, I repeated almost under my breath. Right zip code, Scott echoed, like it was scripture. I opened the screen door with a sigh and let him in. The boys were in their room. Donna was folding towels at the kitchen table, lips pressed thin when she saw him. He talked fast. He always did, about comps and permits, holding companies and city incentives for urban renewal. I caught maybe half of it. My brain was already fried from roofing a sun-baked duplex all day. Dana didn't interrupt, but her eyes followed every word. When he finally paused to take a breath, she asked the one question I hadn't yet. What's the catch? Scott laughed. No catch, Dana, just speed. The city's got this place flagged for nuisance. If we don't grab it now, it'll go to someone else. I've already got a contact who'll fast-track our bid. We just need to move. That's it. Dana crossed her arms. You mean we just need to sign whatever you put in front of us and hope it all works out? Scott's smile flickered. Just a hair. It's routine. It's just a power of attorney so I can negotiate on your behalf. File the Reno permits, push through the loan, saves you 2 trips downtown. I said nothing, just stared at that folder, now resting on the corner of our scratched-up table like it belonged there. Dana looked at me. Really looked. Are you sure about this, Aaron? I don't like signing things I don't understand. I should have said no. Should have told Scott to slow down, to give me the weekend to read everything front to back. But pressure's a funny thing. It doesn't scream at you. It whispers quietly over time, like a faucet drip filling a sink. And our sink was already overflowing. Tyler had just come back from the ER, another breathing episode at school. The nurse had called me twice while I was under a porch trying to reroute wiring. I'd missed both calls. Dana had to Uber him herself. The hospital bill was sitting on the counter now, under a pink envelope from the mortgage company. And Ben, he'd stopped smiling when he talked. He just grunted. Wouldn't say what was wrong, but I knew he was embarrassed. Kids teased him for the metal on his teeth that he didn't have. Braces we couldn't afford. Scott pushed the folder toward me, slow and easy. It's your call, man. I'm just giving you a way out of this grind. I looked at Dana one last time. She was still staring at me, fingers clenched around the towel she hadn't finished folding. Her eyes said don't, but her silence said she was tired too. I picked up the pen. The ballpoint was cheap, one of those promotional ones from a title company. It skipped as I scrawled my name. Once, twice, a few initials. Scott clapped me on the back like we'd just sealed a championship. You won't regret this, he said. Seriously, this is the one. He stayed 10 more minutes. Then he was gone, his taillights flickering as he turned off our street. Dana and I didn't talk right away. The boys were brushing their teeth. She finished folding the towel slowly. Then she sat next to me on the couch, quiet, the air conditioner humming and the sound of Ben coughing down the hallway. We're in this together, right? She asked. It was soft, hesitant, like she was reaching across a canyon that had opened up between us. Yeah, I said. I lied, because the second that pen touched paper, I felt it, the smallest tilt in the world under my feet. Like the earth had shifted by a single inch and nobody noticed but me. But it was enough. I lay awake that night listening to the wind through the trees, the occasional cough from the kids' room, and the whisper of my own thoughts looping over and over. I trusted him. God help me, I trusted him. And that was the last night I slept easy. Looking back, the plan was already locked in stone. I just couldn't see it yet, because it didn't come with sirens or smoke. It came quietly, like a leak under the floorboards, like rot you don't notice until the joists snap beneath your feet. At first, everything looked normal, maybe even better than normal. Scott showed up to every inspection in a button-down shirt and new boots that still creaked when he walked. He brought donuts to the title office, coffee to the bank reps, laughed with the property appraiser like they were old poker buddies. The man could charm a snake into giving up its venom. I've got your back, Riley, all legal, all clean, he said, handing me a glossy folder labeled Morgan and Riley Holdings, LLC. The name looked professional, safe, like we'd made it. He told me the LLC would protect us both, shield us from liability, streamline the process, make us look serious in front of investors. He even got business cards printed, my name in bold embossed lettering. Aaron Riley, managing partner. I remember standing in the half-gutted living room of that foreclosure and turning the card over in my hand like it meant something. Like I'd finally become more than just a guy with a tool belt and worn knees. But it was Scott who handled the real business. The calls, the applications, the meetings with notaries and city clerks. That stuff's a maze, he said. You don't need the headache, just build. That's your gift. The house itself was a nightmare. I'm talking full gut job. Mold in the walls, copper pipes stripped out, roof sagging like a broken back. The attic smelled like squirrel piss and rot, and I found a literal raccoon skeleton under the bathtub during demo. But I worked. 16-hour days, bleeding knuckles, splinters in my palms I didn't bother digging out. I replaced every stud, rewired every socket, patched the roof myself in the middle of a thunderstorm because the crew bailed. Meanwhile, Scott would breeze in late, Bluetooth blinking in his ear, murmuring to someone about preferred vendors and accelerated closings. He never stayed long. Sometimes I'd just see the taillights of his car disappearing down the block as I swept up sawdust in the dark. Aaron, I need you to sign this real quick, just for the city. Can you co-sign this form? It's temporary, just to get us through the inspection window. It's all boilerplate. Legal fluff? You trust me, right? Those 3 words became his mantra. You trust me, right? And I did. God help me, I did. Every paper he handed me came clipped and tabbed like it had been blessed by the Pope himself. He'd always point to the signature lines with a confident finger, say something like, "Just your John Hancock, then we're golden." The stack grew taller. First 2 pages, then 10, then contracts as thick as phone books. But the more I signed, the more I felt like I was moving forward, like this project might actually lift us out of the quicksand. Dana was skeptical, of course. She didn't like the fact that the bank checks were made out to Scott directly. "The LLC," he told me with that same wave of the hand, like he was brushing off lint. "It's cleaner on their end. You'll get your cut at closing. Big one." I started repeating his words to Dana without realizing it, echoing him like a recording, telling her it was all legal, all clean, just like Scott said. And slowly I watched her shoulders relax. Not completely, but enough. She started making plans again. Talked about taking the boys to Galveston for spring break if the flip went through. Smiled once or twice during dinner, something I hadn't seen in months. By Christmas, the house was something else. Hardwood floors gleamed, walls painted eggshell white with soft gray trim. I'd even built custom cabinetry in the kitchen and hand-sanded every drawer pull. Dana brought the boys by one afternoon. Tyler coughed the whole time, but Ben was impressed, said it looked like one of those houses on YouTube. Scott showed up late that evening, grinning like Santa in a tailored blazer. He tossed me a thick envelope and said, "Your bonus, buddy." I opened it in the cab of my truck. It was cash, neatly stacked, 50s and 20s. My fingers shook just a little as I flipped through it. $5,000. I sat there for a long time, staring at the envelope under the dome light. I should have been thrilled. It was more than I'd made in some entire seasons. But something in the back of my neck itched. There was no pay stub, no documentation, just money. Scott's words echoed in my ears. "You'll get your cut at closing." Was this the cut, or just a tip? I walked into the house that night with dirt still on my jeans and money in my hand. Dana asked where it came from. "Bonus," I said. "From Scott. Said the project's ahead of schedule." She looked at the envelope, then at me. Her brow furrowed. "Did he say where it came from?" I hesitated. "Just investor money, I think." She didn't press, but she didn't smile either. Just nodded slowly and went back to cleaning the dishes. That was the night I first noticed a crack running through my sense of certainty. It wasn't big, not yet, but it was there, like a single loose nail in a load-bearing wall. Something I told myself I'd tighten tomorrow, but tomorrow never came. It started with a call I almost ignored. I was in the middle of replacing a warped door frame when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I wiped my hands on my jeans and almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Mr. Riley, this is from the Denton County Tax Office. This is a second notice. Property taxes are past due for parcel Masher 4032B. Please remit payment within 10 business days to avoid further action." I stared at the drywall for a long moment after the line went dead. That couldn't be right. Property taxes were supposed to be wrapped into the closing costs. Scott had said as much. Later that week, a letter arrived. Not handwritten, not warm, just a cold bank envelope addressed to Aaron Riley, managing member, Morgan and Riley Holdings, LLC. Inside, a single page. Notice of mortgage transfer. New entity, Cypress Cove Investments, LLC. I reread it 3 times, each pass slower than the last. Cypress Cove. I hadn't heard of them. I hadn't signed anything about them. I wasn't even sure if they were a lender or a shell. Donna found me that night at the kitchen table. The letter crumpled in my hand, the light above flickering like it couldn't make up its mind. "Is everything okay?" she asked. I wanted to lie, but I couldn't find the words. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. 2 men stood on the porch. Suits, clipboard, no smiles. The taller one checked a document and spoke like he was reading from a script. "We're looking for Mr. Aaron Riley. Are you the managing member of Morgan and Riley Holdings?" I blinked. Yeah, that's me. What is this about?" "We have some questions about deed transfers filed through the Denton County Clerk's office," one said, "specifically concerning your LLC's recent activity." I told them I'd call them back, that I needed to consult my partner, that this was news to me. Scott didn't answer his phone. Not the first time, not the second. By the third, it rang once and went to voicemail. By the fourth, I got a recording. "This number is no longer in service." I drove to his place, No car in the driveway. Curtains pulled. Mail piled in the box. I knocked. Nothing. Waited. Still nothing. I tried the office address listed on our LLC documents. It was an old strip mall unit next to a vape shop and a boarded-up laundromat. The door had a for lease sign taped inside. I stood there for a long time. The panic came slowly, like cold water rising over your boots. A kind of slow-motion dread that settles in your joints and refuses to let go. That night I opened the LLC documents for the first time since I signed them. My hands were shaking as I flipped through the glossy printouts. Page after page of contracts, registrations, notarizations. And there it was. Manager of record, Aaron Riley. Registered agent, Aaron Riley. Authorized signatory, Aaron Riley. Everywhere I looked, my name, my signature, my liability. The deed to the house we'd flipped, transferred 3 weeks ago, into Cypress Cove, but filed by Morgan and Riley Holdings. The signature authorizing it? Mine. Except I didn't remember signing that one. But there it was, my handwriting, my scrawl, on a page I'd never seen. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat on the floor beside the kitchen counter, papers spread around me like a forensic scene, while the refrigerator hummed and the boys snored down the hall. By morning, I called a lawyer. He was polite at first. Then he read the documents. "Let me get this straight," he said, glasses low on his nose. "You gave Scott Morgan full power of attorney over your business and your personal assets?" "Yes," I said. "And you never read what you were signing?" "I trusted him," I whispered. He sighed. "You're the manager of record. Everything is tied to you. This shell company you're claiming not to know. Cypress Cove? It's not new. It's been used before. There's a pattern here. Fraud, deception, title laundering. But your signature's on every transfer, every invoice, every lien." I felt my stomach twist. "Can we fight this?" "I'll try," he said. "But it's an uphill climb. We need to find this guy. Fast." But by the time I left that meeting, it was already too late. The house had been sold. I saw it on a public real estate database. Closed, all cash sale. Transferred to a private trust. No trace of Morgan or his involvement. Just me. I was the paper trail. The face on the fraud. Scott had vanished like smoke. Every call went to voicemail. His email bounced. His LinkedIn disappeared overnight. Dana scrolled through Facebook and found his profile deleted. It was like he'd never existed. I broke the news to her in the driveway. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked at me with this hollow kind of heartbreak, like I'd taken a sledgehammer to the foundation of everything we'd built. Then came the audit. I got the call at 7 a.m., right as I was making breakfast for Tyler, a government official, polite but firm. "We've flagged Morgan and Riley Holdings as part of an ongoing investigation into contractor fraud. We need access to all documents, receipts, transaction records, and communications tied to your firm." I didn't have half of what they were asking for. Scott had handled the books, but the paper trail didn't lie. Turns out the house was just one piece of a much larger scam. There were false repair invoices, double-billed permits, loan proceeds that had never gone toward construction, just cashed out through fake vendors tied to Cypress Cove and other shells, all filed under my name, my license, my reputation. When the numbers came in, they hit me like a shovel to the chest. Liability, $317,000. Investigative damages, climbing, criminal charges, pending. And then came the knock at the door. A detective in a dark suit, badge on his belt, stern face, folder in hand. He stepped into my kitchen like he already knew every inch of it, sat at my table like it was his own, and then he dropped it, the folder, thick as a Bible. He didn't say anything at first, just tapped it once, then flipped it open and let the pages breathe. "Mr. Riley," he said, "would you care to explain how $1.2 million in stolen assets ended up under your shell company?" I tried to speak, tried to swallow. My mouth was dry. My hands shook. I opened my mouth, but I had no answer. Life didn't fall apart all at once. It unraveled, like a frayed rope, thread by thread. The first hit was the bank. One morning I stopped by the gas station to grab milk and a gallon of unleaded. My card got declined. Twice. I laughed, thinking it was the chip again. Called the bank. Got transferred 3 times before a woman with a robotic tone told me our accounts were frozen, pending investigation. She couldn't tell me more. Next came the letter. Bold red stamp across the top. Notice of seizure. The house, our house, was no longer ours. The bank claimed default on the refinanced mortgage. Because the LLC account held the deed, and that account was now under criminal scrutiny, they weren't obligated to wait. It was legal theft, and I had no shield. Dana didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She just packed, quietly, with this haunted look in her eyes like she was watching our life drain out like water from a broken pipe she couldn't fix. She didn't say much, just gathered the boys, some clothes, a box of family photos, and left for her sisters in Dallas. Tyler clung to her leg. Ben wouldn't look at me. He just climbed in the car and closed the door behind him, like he never planned to open it again. The silence after they left was a different kind of punishment. The neighbors weren't silent, though. Mrs. Conway, 3 houses down, used to wave at me every morning. Now she turned her back and pulled her curtains tighter. The mailman paused at our driveway like he wasn't sure if it was safe to drop the envelope. And then the news vans came. They didn't knock. They just parked. Long black cameras mounted like rifles pointed at the front door. I saw the headline the next morning, plastered across a local station's website. Builder betrays best friend in $1.2 million property swindle. Community stunned. Victims speak out. Victims. I was one of them. But you'd never know it from the broadcast. They showed pictures of the house I'd rebuilt. Talked to an investor I'd never met, who claimed I promised him 20% returns. There were photos of Scott and me together, beer in hand, smiling. The kind you take at a job well done. They made it look like a partnership, like a plan. No one wanted my side. The lawyer I'd hired, the second one after the first bailed mid-call, was blunt, cold even. If you can prove manipulation, paper trail, false pretenses, coercion, we might save you from prison, he said, flipping through a folder without looking up. But unless we find Scott Morgan, and I mean actually find him, you're the fall guy. Scott's gone, I said. Then so are your options. He was right. Scott wasn't just missing. He was a ghost. No phone, no address, no digital footprint. His name had evaporated from the state business registry like morning fog under the Texas sun. The company website we built together, gone. A 404 screen where once we had smiling photos of job sites, before and after sliders, fake testimonials he insisted we needed to look legit. The LinkedIn page we used to attract contractors and investors had vanished overnight. Even cached versions were wiped clean. I checked our old emails hoping for a trace, an IP, a clue, anything. But the replies had been routed through dummy domains I'd never noticed. I tried to log into the shared drive we'd kept for permits and invoices. Access denied. I even looked at the Facebook memories he'd once proudly tagged me in. 4th of July cookouts, ribbon cuttings, a photo of us standing in front of a property with champagne we couldn't afford. All gone. Not hidden, erased. One by one, like someone scrubbing their life clean with bleach and fire. But he wasn't invisible, not completely. One night, half delirious, heart racing from too much coffee and too little sleep, I found myself driving through the old subdivision. The roads were dark, quiet, the kind that feel like they're waiting for something to go wrong. I didn't plan it. My hands just took the wheel and led me there. Like my body remembered something my brain couldn't admit. And there it was. The house. The first flip. The one I bled for. The one I rebuilt with my bare hands. 16-hour days and cold sandwiches on the roof. It looked different now. The paint was fresh, pale blue instead of the warm beige Dana had picked. The shutters were new. The roof tiles gleamed under the moonlight. The lawn was resodded, unnaturally green, like it had been rolled out of a showroom and stapled into the earth. Even the walkway had been replaced. The cracks I'd filled smoothed over like scars that never happened. But it was the sign that stopped me cold. Coming soon. Morgan Developments. Different font. Sleeker. Polished. But the name? His. Still his. The bastard hadn't disappeared. He'd just rebranded. Same game. New mask. And in that moment, everything inside me turned to ice. I stared at that sign so long my eyes burned. Fists white-knuckled on the steering wheel. heart pounding like a war drum. I imagined tearing it down, driving across the lawn, smashing the porch I built, just to leave a mark. But I didn't even get out of the truck, because deep down I knew, no matter what I did, the only wreckage that mattered was already behind me. Different font, same damn name. He hadn't vanished. He'd just hit restart. Same game. New mask. I pulled over, parked under a broken street lamp, and stared at that sign until my vision blurred. My hands gripped the wheel so tight I left indentations in the rubber. I thought about smashing the sign, leaving tire tracks across the fresh lawn. But I didn't. I didn't even get out of the truck, because what would it change? The next day, Dana called. It was the first time I'd heard her voice in a week. I didn't want to do this over the phone, she said, voice strained and brittle. But the boys, they need stability, Aaron. I can't bring them back into that mess. I didn't know what to say. I could hear Ben crying softly in the background. Not loud, just this quiet, wounded sound like something was breaking and trying not to. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about money anymore, or pride, or jail time. I was losing them, losing the people I built everything for. I tried to sleep that night, but the silence was unbearable. Every creak of the floor felt like judgment. I started pacing, then stopped. The living room was mostly empty now, just a fold-out chair and some unopened mail. The photo of our wedding still hung above the mantel, tilted slightly. Food stopped tasting like anything. Coffee turned to ash. I skipped meals, then forgot them altogether. My ribs started showing beneath my shirts. The landlord called twice about rent. I didn't answer. Every time the phone rang, my stomach turned. Was it the DA? Another lawsuit? Another accusation? Once, someone from the IRS called. I thought it might be another audit. Turned out they wanted clarification on a 1099 form Scott had filed with my name, for consulting work I'd never done. The part that gutted me most wasn't the legal fallout. It was the humiliation. At the grocery store, a cashier paused when she saw my name on the debit card. "You're that guy, right?" she said. Not curious, just cautious. At church, no one sat beside me. At the job center, the lady behind the desk smiled tightly and said they'd call if something opened up. Even my brother stopped returning my messages. Maybe the worst part of it all was knowing I had a role in it. Not the scam, maybe, but the failure. I wanted a way out. I wanted to believe there was an easier path. I saw the shortcut and thought, for once, it might lead somewhere better. I'd built homes for strangers that still stood straight and strong. I'd torn down rot and rebuilt it better. But I hadn't protected the one house that mattered most. Mine. I hadn't read the fine print. I hadn't questioned enough. I hadn't listened to Dana's warnings or that small, aching voice in the back of my head that said, something's not right. I just signed. Because I was tired. Because I trusted a man who didn't deserve it. Because I wanted to believe we were still in it together. And now all I had left were echoing rooms, frozen accounts, and the empty sound of my name in a headline. Then came the day of reckoning. It started with a flash of red and blue. I was halfway between sleep and consciousness. The kind of fog that only comes after 3 straight nights of pacing and punishing yourself with memory. The sun hadn't even breached the horizon when I heard the sirens. First distant, then too close. Then brakes, boots, the slam of car doors. I barely had time to pull on jeans before the banging started. "Aaron Riley, come out with your hands visible." It echoed like gunfire through the walls I'd once insulated myself. My own front lawn was lit up like a crime scene. Neighbors peeked through blinds, one woman clutching her phone like she was streaming it live. Mrs. Conway stood at her porch with a robe and a face full of satisfaction. She didn't even pretend to look surprised. When I opened the door, 5 officers in tactical gear aimed their guns at my chest. I raised my hands instinctively, heart thudding so hard I thought I might pass out. 2 seconds later, I was face down on the porch. The concrete was cold, wet with morning dew. One of them twisted my arms behind my back like I might bolt. I didn't resist, because where was there left to run? Click. The cuffs bit into my wrists. I saw Ben in the doorway, pajama pants, wild hair, holding Tyler's stuffed bear. His face was blank, like his brain hadn't caught up to the image in front of him. Dana's voice was somewhere behind him, panicked, breaking. "Wait, he's not dangerous. He's not—" They didn't stop. They didn't hesitate. They shoved me into the back of the cruiser as Tyler cried from the hallway, and for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be powerless in the eyes of your own child. The ride to the station was silent. They didn't speak to me. Didn't need to. In the holding cell, time melted. The air stank of bleach and hopelessness. The bench was steel and unforgiving. My fingers were still numb from the cuffs when the door creaked open and a man in a crisp gray suit stepped in. Prosecutor, sharp eyes. The kind that had seen 100 broken men and still smelled blood. He dropped a file thick as a phone book onto the metal table. Then he sat, calm as you like, and opened it. No introductions, no small talk. "Help us find Scott Morgan," he said, "and we'll cut your sentence in half." He didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just let the words hang in the stale air like a noose. 10 years. That's what he said I was facing. Wire fraud, contractor fraud, conspiracy to commit larceny. The numbers stacked up like bricks. 10 years, maybe more. Time that would wipe my boys' childhoods clean off the calendar. And all I had to do to cut it was give them everything I knew. Betray my friend, or lose my family. I looked at the ceiling, thought about the photos still taped to the fridge, about the school forms I hadn't signed, about Dana's hands when she was tired, always trembling just slightly, about Tyler's asthma flaring up when he was scared. Ben's birthday was next week. If I went away, I'd miss it all. And Scott? He wasn't my friend anymore. He hadn't been for a long time. He'd taken my name, my license, my reputation, my home, and now he wanted my freedom too? I leaned forward. "I'll talk." And I did. Everything. Addresses, old burner numbers, the last email signature I saw with his Arizona LLC, names of guys he mentioned in passing, bank account numbers scratched on legal pads, offshore accounts he bragged about when he thought I wasn't listening. I told them about the storage unit near the train tracks where he used to keep backup files, about the woman in Dallas who notarized forms after hours for him under a different name. I gave them the blueprints of the scam I hadn't drawn but had unknowingly helped paint. The man nodded, took notes, quiet, satisfied. 3 weeks later, the headline hit like a cannon. "Fugitive developer Scott Morgan arrested in Flagstaff, Arizona. Authorities say he was running parallel scam under alias Daniel Corrick." I watched the footage on a grainy jailhouse TV. The volume turned low while 2 other inmates played cards beside me. There he was, Scott Morgan, handcuffed, head down, dragged out of a desert condo in a polo shirt and sunglasses, still grinning in his mugshot. The next morning, the guards moved me to a different holding tier. My attorney met me behind plexiglass. "They want you to testify," he said. "They're offering probation, 2 years, if you cooperate." Probation. It wasn't freedom, but it wasn't prison either. It was a way out, a way back, even if only part way. And so, I stood in court, numb, exhausted, dressed in a suit that didn't fit anymore, and shoes that pinched my arches. Scott sat across the room, stone-faced. No smile this time, just cold calculation. He never looked at me, not once, even when I spoke his name aloud before a jury of strangers. I told the truth. I told them what he'd done, what I'd missed, what I'd signed, blind and trusting. I told them how he vanished, how he left me behind, how he built a new scam off the bones of the one that buried me. They listened, and then they deliberated. The verdict came swift. They believed I was a pawn, a fool, not innocent, but not the architect. Scott got 15 years. I got 2 years probation, a slap on paper. But that slap echoed. I lost my contractor's license, my professional standing, my savings. And worst of all, Dana didn't come to court. She didn't bring the boys. She sent a message through her lawyer. "Please don't contact us. Not yet." The courtroom emptied. Cameras flashed. I stepped outside into the cold, clean air and realized I didn't even know where to go. It didn't feel like a win. Not really. Because when you lose everything, even justice feels like defeat. The media circus faded. The vans packed up. Reporters stopped calling. The headlines that once screamed my name found someone else to devour. But the silence they left behind, it wasn't peace. It was aftermath. Thick. Still. Like smoke that lingers after the fire is out, but still stings your eyes. People forgot the story, but they didn't forget me. At the hardware store, the cashier didn't meet my gaze. At church, the same pew I'd sat in for 15 years stayed empty on either side of me. And job after job, the same thing. "Oh, sorry, Mr. Riley. The position's already been filled." Didn't matter if I was the most qualified guy in the room. I was the guy from the news. The guy who let a scam run through his fingers. The guy who signed. I bagged groceries at a corner store that used to carry my business cards on the window. I mowed lawns for people whose decks I'd once built. I cleaned gutters in neighborhoods where I used to be called sir. The worst part wasn't the work. It was the way people looked at me. Like I'd rotted from the inside out and just hadn't noticed yet. Dana filed for divorce 6 months after the sentencing. No phone call. Just a white envelope on the welcome mat of the one-bedroom apartment I was renting by the highway. Inside was a note. One line. "I can't carry your mistakes anymore." I didn't fight it. The boy stopped calling. At first I figured Dana was keeping them away, trying to protect them. But eventually I stopped pretending. They were growing up, and all they had left of their father was a fog of shame and scandal. Every birthday, I sent cards. Sometimes cash. Sometimes books I thought they'd like. I don't know if they ever read them. I never got anything back. Some nights when the highway's quiet and the traffic dips low, I drive past the house. The house. The one I poured my back into. The one I wired and roofed and painted until my fingers bled. The one that once echoed with my boys' laughter and smelled of sawdust and Saturday pancakes. Now it's someone else's. There's a swing set in the yard. The paint's a lighter blue than what I chose. There's a new mailbox and flowers planted along the walkway. The windows glow warm in the evening. I tell myself that's a good thing, but it still feels like a tombstone. The worst part is, it's a perfect house. Still standing. Still solid. I built it right, and it stands there every night like a monument to the version of me that believed hard work was enough. Sometimes I wonder if trust is just another word for hope, or maybe just a slower kind of foolishness. I keep a copy of that folder, the one the detective dropped on my table the morning everything ended. It's warped from rain. Some pages are stained with coffee or tears. I honestly don't remember which. It sits on the top shelf of my closet. I haven't opened it in over a year, but I can't throw it away. It's heavier than it looks. I've read it enough to know the lesson. You can build 100 houses, stack every brick, drive every nail, pour every ounce of yourself into making something last. But it only takes one signature, one moment of blind trust to lose everything. So if you're reading this, if this ever ends up in someone's hands who still believes in clean deals and firm handshakes, hear me. Read every line. Question every friend, no matter how long you've known them, especially those who never look you in the eye when they hand you a pen. Don't sign unless your gut is quiet, unless your mind is clear, unless you've seen the fine print and read it twice. Because sometimes the real crime isn't what they steal. It's what you give away, your time, your name, your future, and you don't realize it until it's too damn late.